Hello again, I am Blunty. This is a whole bunch of web cameras that I've collected over the years, some of which used to service me as a YouTuber, believe it or not. Some were just used in streaming, some I own pre-YouTube. That pale one right in the front there, that's a special one. I'll tell you about that a little later. I figure I'm going to test all of these to see if they work with the Nintendo Switch video chat feature, because most of them should. I know for a fact 1, 2, 3 of them won't, because did you know you can actually use Nintendo's official Nintendo Switch 2 camera on a PC? Because that's what we're doing right now. This is connected to my PC. I'm recording it that way. And Nintendo's camera is pretty damn unique when it comes to web cameras, and it's unique in a way that is both a blessing and a curse. And the way in which it is unique, it is extraordinarily wide angle. Like, you're looking at me from head to knee almost here, if I tilt it down a bit probably, and I can touch the camera without taking a step forward. That's how astonishingly wide angle it is. And that's a blessing, because basically no matter where you plop it down next to your TV or on your coffee table, wherever, you're pretty much guaranteed to be in frame. If you can see the front of the camera, you're going to be in frame there somewhere. It's a curse because, well, maybe you're going to show parts of your living environment that you don't want other people to see. And you go, well, okay, we'll use the cutout feature and background removal and all that sort of stuff. But that is where another problem comes in as well. Because this camera is only 1080p, 30 FPS. Not a very big sensor. And I predicted this issue in a video pre-release, right there. But the short version of it is this. If you're only dealing with 1080p and you are extraordinarily wide angle, when you go to cut out the head bit, if you're doing sort of the crop in for the head, like the Nintendo Switch chat function does, whether it's removing the background or not, doesn't matter, it just crops in, you're not dealing with very many pixels. Let me show you. That's me cropping in to do a little mid shot here, just a comfortable little mid shot. 1080p using what, 5-10% the frame at max? Doesn't look good. And the problem with that is it doesn't look good like this, and it doesn't look good when you do the magical background removal stuff, because you're not dealing with a lot of information for it to work out what's your face and what's background and where your hair is and all that sort of stuff. So that tends to wind up looking garbage too. And as a web camera, I don't love it. It's not especially good quality, especially for the price you pay, like $55 American, $69 Australian for a 1080p 30 FPS web camera that can't even white balance correctly. Look at my skin. A bit green, isn't it? Bit of a green tinge to my skin. I don't look healthy. I mean, I don't ordinarily look healthy, but I look slightly healthier than this. I should be a bit pinker. And there's another problem with these really, really wide angle cameras, because it's doing a whole frame trying to figure out what is white. So all of these other colors in the frame here are confusing where the white point should be, which means I look a bit green. So fact is, it seems Nintendo's camera just might not be the best choice. So let's see if we can find out what the best choice actually is. Today, I'm going to plug in each one of these sequentially, see which ones work and which ones don't work. Like I said, I already pretty much know which ones should work in theory, but we've got to test them. And the benefit with these, using them on the Switch, is they're not so wide angle. So the flexibility and quality that you'll get out of these is probably going to be better, actually. And you know what, while we're at it, let's bug around a bit, have a little bit of playtime. This right here is my old Canon 60D, my old DSLR camera. Once upon a time, my workhorse camera. And there is a special trick that I can use to get this working on the Nintendo Switch 2 as well. Also, this one here, which is my current go-to camera. This is the Lumix S1. I really love this thing, mirrorless, full frame. Really nice camera for videography. So we'll give that a go as well, using a trick. And finally, if you are low on budget, I've got 2 ultra budget options for you to use an existing camera. And I've even got the cheapest web camera you could possibly get off Amazon that will work like this. $10. $10 for a web camera that should work flawlessly on the Nintendo Switch 2. So let's give them a go. Okay then, just so we're staying on theme, I've actually set up the Nintendo Switch 2 camera as our overhead camera. And this is the edge of my desk. You can see how much it's bowing there. That's the fisheye lens distortion. So that's not being corrected for, which is why also when I got closer to the camera in that opening bit, it was rather unflattering, because nobody looks good in fisheye. The distance between desktop and lens, by the way, is 30 centimeters. That's all we're dealing with there. Or for you Americans, that's about a foot. Just a foot. A foot distance gets you this much field of view. It is ridiculously wide angle, like I said. So First to test here, one of the more popular choices out there for web cameras for streamers and whatnot these days. This is one of Elgato's face cams. This is their original model. I've had a few models since. It doesn't actually matter which one I test because all of these are going to have the same exact problem, because I already know for a fact that Elgato's web cameras do not work without their special software and their special drivers. They are not standard web cameras. They do not operate over standard USB communications. They do not identify themselves as a web camera to any device because, well, Elgato are kind of shitty like that. Like, they make a lot of good hardware. I've got Elgato lights, I've got Elgato Stream Decks, but the way they do their software integration is just really, really shitty. I really hate it. But in any case, we have to do our due diligence and actually plug this thing in just to prove it won't work. So, plugging it into the switch now, click, and nothing. No camera is connected. No response from the switch at all. Big surprise! Nope. Next up, a couple examples of one of the most popular web cameras in all of time and space. These are both the Logitech C920. They are slightly different models, as you can tell from the face of them, slightly different labeling on them. They're both 1080p, 30 frames a second, and in theory, these should work perfectly, although we might have one little problem we need to solve. That right there is a USB-A type plug, and the connector on the top of the switch is a USB-C. So this lets us test two things. Number one, will it work with one of these little adapters, which is literally just a mechanical adapter to go from the USB-A to USB-C. That should work because this adapter isn't doing anything special. It's not doing anything electronic in there. It is literally just taking the wires from this and squeezing them down into this connector here. That should work. Also, we need to test whether we can just plug that into the dock, of course. Or is it only the top USB port that works? Oh my god. I've just looked up at the preview and noticed the awful, completely terrible auto exposure. Look at that hotspot. Jesus. This is Nintendo's web camera is just kind of terrible. The more I play with it, the more things I notice that are terrible about it. So, let's grab one of these Logitechs, plug it in the top port with our little USB adapter there, and see what happens. Okay, we are connected, and it lit up immediately. And the switch itself recognized the camera right away. It was just instant. I plugged it in, and it just started working. No big shock there. So, let's do that again, but use the USB port on the side of the dock instead. Plugged it in, instantly started working again. So we should have a look at how this camera looks now, shouldn't we? So there we go. Pretty damn good looking web camera, don't you think? I'm sitting kind of an arm's length away from it as I touch it there, just to give you an idea of how wide angle this camera lens is. So if you are setting up, near your TV or on your coffee table or something, you are going to get a more fuller shot as well, but not anywhere near as wide angle as Nintendo's own camera. The other thing I like about the Logitech C900 series cameras is, I can show you on the other one here, and it's actually a couple of things. First thing is, on the bottom of their little stands there, they've got a 1/4 screw. Second thing is, as you can see there, they've got autofocus. So when you hold something up to the camera, you might have to do the old thing where you trick it with your hand to make sure you're in focus there. You can focus on stuff. Not sure how useful that'll be in a Switch 2 chat, but I'd rather have that than not have it. Okay, so that one works perfectly well. We also need to test the sibling model. I'm not expecting anything different at all to happen here, but we have to do our testing, don't we? We have to do it properly. Can't skip any steps. So into the USB port on the top, and boom, instantly lights up. Just give me a second here. We got a little bit of smudge on the lens. So yeah, you might be able to tell. Yeah, the lights are a little bit, actually that one's probably a better one. The lights are a little bit bloomy on these cameras. That's because they've got plastic lenses basically, or plastic covers over the regular lenses, which are, I think, at least partially glass. So the image quality from these is not spectacular. But again, we keep even to remind ourselves we're dealing with Switch 2 here, and you're not really going to appreciate the fullness of this camera anyway. But it's always better to have too good a camera than not good enough, right? And frankly, when we start talking about sort of the slight bloom in lights back there of web camera versus web camera, I think we might be nitpicking a bit much. Pretty much whatever variation of the C920 you'll get, and they are still selling these. These have been around for a couple of decades, I think, at this point. But they're really, really good web cameras. And you know what? While we're at it, I've got this Persia Core 1 sitting right here that was sent in for me to have a play with and experiment a bit with 3D printing. It's already done some duty helping me figure out the mouse situation on the Switch 2. Let's put it to use with these cameras too, because all these cameras are good-ish to pretty good. I reckon we can make them better, or at least more useful, or at least more practical, with just a little bit of help from a 3D print. I've even got a couple of 3D prints in mind for the official Nintendo Switch 2 camera that I've tried to slap together myself. We'll see how well they work. So now that we have our first working web camera, what can we do to improve this with a 3D print? Well, I found this, which is privacy shutter, which is something this camera doesn't have. This is from a day and age before everyone needed to be really paranoid about whether or not their web camera was on, and everyone wanted privacy shutters on everything. So it took about 12 minutes to print this thing up, really easy. Downloaded it just off the net, didn't even have to touch it, just plugged it into the printer, away we go. And it should just snap on the front there. Yep. Situates itself perfectly because it is designed for this camera, and there we go. Privacy shutter. 3D printing, making a good camera even better. Nice. Next on the table, another Logitech, for a good reason. These were extremely popular as well, even older than the C920. It's only a 720p camera, so we'll see how the Switch deals with that. But yeah, you can still buy these. Even today, they're still sitting there on Amazon. They're just a absolute workhorse of a web camera. And of course, they're pretty damn cheap these days too. So let's undo the cord here. We'll grab a little adapter, plug it in the top, and I'm expecting this to work straight off the bat, just like the other Logitechs, because it shouldn't need any drivers. Ding, straight away, up it goes. So as you can see, there are noticeably longer lens on this one. I'm still sort of within an arm's reach of it, but we're sort of much more narrow field of view here. Which is a plus or a minus depending on how you're using this. If you're using it further away on the coffee table or on the TV or anything, you're going to get a narrow field of view, so you're going to get more pixels for your face, which is going to improve how things look in chat in general. And I forgot just how good this camera is. Like, I've had this ever since they were new, but they were so good and so reliable. Like I said, they're still selling them today. You can buy a brand new one of these right now, and I think you should. I've got a couple of different 3D prints for improving this one. One of them is this, which is something... I originally printed up one of these from the exact same file. It's still online from like 8 years ago, the very first time I fiddled with 3D printing. And it is just a little slot with a 1/4-20 mount in there. So the idea is you grab your little sort of monitor mount here and you slide this in there. Nice little friction fit. So now we have a tripod mount down the bottom there. And if you're not that familiar with camera stuff, the 1/4-20 fitting is just standard across the board. You'll find it on all kinds of tripods, everything from the cheap and nasty little selfie sticks and desktop tripods you can get for a couple of bucks, all the way up to super fancy prosumer level stuff as well. So now I've got a way to mount this in a bunch of different ways, nice and easy. But there is another 3D print that I spotted while looking around for things for this particular fellow that really took my fancy, and it is this, which is a new faceplate for it, which comes in 3 parts, and a little cog here that is apparently going to engage with the lens mount inside there and give me a manual focus for this camera, because this camera does not have autofocus. So on the off chance I want to focus on something close, apparently I can do that. And I've owned this camera since they were new, right? And I had no idea that this faceplate just pops right off. Look at that. I didn't know it did that. Screwed over now. So we have 1, 2, 3 screws. We should just pop those. Probably shouldn't be doing this while it's turned on, but hey, whatever. It's low voltage USB. What could possibly go wrong? It's not like I could drop a screw in there and short circuit something. And yeah, there we go. There's the little knurling around the edge of the lens. So we pop that over, pop on the cog. First screw goes in to secure the bottom part of the base plate. Then that goes on and engages with the lens itself. And now I have the ability to focus that camera manually, which is kind of neat. This one's mostly for poops and giggles, and I haven't bothered doing a 3D print for this because I know for a fact it's not going to work. This is the PlayStation Eye. And the reason I know this is not going to work with the Nintendo Switch 2 is because I know it doesn't work with a regular computer without some sort of specialized driver. Like Sony haven't even released a driver for these to work on PCs. There are community-made sort of hacked-together drivers that make these things kind of sort of work, and you can use them for interesting things. Some people use them even for, or used to use them once upon a time, I suppose, for VR tracking using the PlayStation Wands things for VR. I tried that once. It was terrible because those PlayStation 1 things are terrible. But let's do it anyway. I'm going to plug it in, see what happens. And we do have a light here, but all that means is it's recognizing that there is USB power coming into the camera. The camera itself is not communicating to the switch. There is no auditory or visual signals going back and forth. Doesn't work. Didn't expect it to. Another one I am not expecting to work, but I had to try it because this is an old favorite camera of mine. Look how banged up and yellowed it is from age. Some of you might realize there is a reason why this has a Lego base plate gaffer taped to the mount of the camera, and that is because this is my very first web camera. I don't really have to 3D print anything for this either. It already has a privacy shutter, and it already has manual focus, which is one of the reasons I got this camera in the first place back when I was doing my Lego stop motion animations. Long-time viewers remember those? This is the very first camera I ever used to make those with. It is very low resolution, but I suspect this will not work with the Switch 2 because this too, like the PlayStation Eye before it, does need special drivers. This camera predates standardized USB video signals, basically. The video devices have USB. This predates any kind of standardization of that. So every single web camera from this era needed its own special bespoke drivers and everything. So if this works, it will be a miracle. Don't think it will, though. And sure enough, no camera is connected, nothing at all. There are no lights on this to tell us it's getting power or anything. It should still work. Like the last time I tried it out a few years back, when I trying to find a driver for this that works on modern Windows, by the way. Nightmare. But yeah, I wasn't expecting that to work, but I had to kind of try it anyway because I can't even bring myself to throw this out. Like, it's not useful for anything anymore, but I've got such an emotional attachment to it from back in the day when I used to do my Lego films. Oh, poor old thing. Next, here is where we get to another brand new camera. This is just the absolute cheapest web camera you could possibly buy on Amazon. Actually, there were a couple cheaper options, but they were either sort of low resolution or otherwise had big red flags all around them. But this one here, it's made really, really cheaply. Like, it's got a little stand that you can hook on the back of your monitor and everything, so that's nice. But there's no strain relief on the cable that goes right in the back of the camera there. What I suspect this is, you can actually buy little modules. They're about that long. They come with a camera and a microphone and some connections, or possibly with a USB cable already wired up. But you can buy the modules they use in laptops. So what I suspect this is inside here is a laptop web camera, just slabbed inside the cheapest possible plastic case they could make for it. Well, I guess not the absolute cheapest. They did bother giving it a mount and a hinge and everything. But that's what I suspect is inside here. You can buy those modules for like a couple of bucks on, you know, the AliExpress and that kind of stuff. But this camera costs like $10 straight off Amazon. Out of the box, it should, in theory, work. So once again, with our little adapter there, and plug it in, and boom, instantly works. I gotta tell you, it's not the most impressive camera in the world, but it is, however, better than I expected for the $10 asking price for it. I mean, it does look, for all the world, exactly like any number of, you know, basic ass bitch web cameras built into laptops, doesn't it? This is just the standard laptop web camera look. Because, like I said, that's pretty much what it is, except in a box with a USB tail hanging out the end. I'm reasonably well lit here, of course, but we're still sort of getting graininess in the sort of darky shadow areas there, so it's not exactly the most sensitive camera in the world to light, but once more, we remind ourselves that we're dealing with Switch 2 chat here, which is already compromised in quality of resolution and frame rate and everything. And by the time you get squished down and all you're seeing is your little face cruising around on your little Mario Kart or something, I think it's going to work perfectly fine. Certainly $10 worth of fine, don't you think? But it is the same resolution as Nintendo's camera and the same frame rate as Nintendo's camera, and it will get the job done if you are really, really desperate just for a basic video chat, working on your Nintendo Switch without having to spend Nintendo's money. $10, away you go. I even made a special 3D print for this one too, which is a little stand someone designed for web cameras. As the model comes, it does not have the sides cut out of it, so it's designed for a very specific model of web camera that would slide directly in that. In fact, I think the C20 would fit in there. Yeah, there it does. It's probably made for that one. I forget. But in the Prusa Slicer program, it's really easy to just carve out some negative space, so that's all I did there. I put a little block in the middle of that and said, hey, where this block is, don't print anything anymore. So that will now let me do this. Boom, we have a little stand for our web camera. Boop. Now, some of you may be familiar with these. These are cam links, another product from Elgato. These basically take a HDMI signal, any HDMI signal. Obviously, they're designed for use with HDMI out from cameras. This thing doesn't know what you're squirting into it. So in theory, you could put your PlayStation 5 into the camera input on the Switch if these work. In theory, they should, because unlike most other Elgato stuff, I don't think these require special hardware. These should identify themselves as a standard web camera to Windows. We are once again going to need to use our little adapter here. And of course, we're going to need a camera with HDMI out, such as the Lumix S1 here, my go-to camera. So, give me a second, I'll get this all wired up. So all we need is this little cable here, which is a micro HDMI to regular HDMI. Not all cameras use micro HDMI. There are like 3 different formats for HDMI plugs. This is the smallest one and frankly the worst one. There's a slightly bigger one, and some cameras just have standard HDMI, so you need the appropriate cable for whatever your camera is outputting. But in theory, all we need to do is plug in the HDMI cable to that end, plug HDMI cable into that end, and plug this into the Switch. Turn on the camera, boop, and let's see how we do. Plugging it in. It does not work. The camera is definitely outputting HDMI because I just unplugged and replugged there. You saw that screen blank out for a second when I did that. That means it's switching the input. And I have double checked that HDMI is working on this camera before I started recording. It works perfectly normally. But no, the cam link on the Nintendo Switch does not see this. Isn't that interesting? Has something changed with Elgato, or do these things do something slightly off kilter? I don't know. If that's the case though, I prepared for that. Amazon cheapo to the rescue again. This is the HD video capture thingy. It does exactly what the Elgato thing does, except for way, 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 way cheaper. This is the cheapest version of this I could find on Amazon at the time. So let's get rid of the cam link. Garbage, useless, pointless. Plug in the cheapo knockoff device. USB. Wait, come on! How many times did I try that? 1, 2, 3, 4. Jesus Christ. Plug it in and instant success. So as we can see here, there's a bit of lag in the frame rate and it's not really doing perfect justice to the resolution this camera is capable of outputting. But of course we do also have the niceties of you can use fancy lenses to get that soft bokeh background and everything and look all fancy on your Switch 2 chats at, again, at those lovely sort of 6 to 12 FPS video chats that tend to happen. So yeah, the sort of blurriness that happens with this cheapo USB to HDMI adapter, it would be a problem if I wanted to use it for, you know, regular YouTube type stuff or for streaming. But for the purposes of the Switch, where again, the video chat that happens is low frame rate anyway, nobody's going to be able to tell the difference, except for the fact that your camera looks particularly fancy. So, now that we have a HDMI input device that works perfectly with the Nintendo Switch 2, now let's try something really adventurous and try it with an old DSLR camera. It really shouldn't matter what the technology is of the camera, DSLR, mirrorless, interchangeable lens, fixed lens, it doesn't really matter. HDMI is HDMI. This should work perfectly. Once I untangle all the cables here. Jesus. There we go. Now, as you can see, I've got a dummy battery here. This just is something I used to use all the time because the battery life on this thing wasn't spectacular back in the day. So this is just a dummy battery hooked up to a regular power brick. So give me a sec, we'll have to plug that in before the camera actually operates. Alrighty, on we go. You're going to power on without any issues. Lovely. Nice little reassuring click there. Now there is one problem we're going to have with this camera, but let's plug it in first and we'll talk about that. And sure enough, plugged it in. 2 seconds later, there is an image on screen. Now, let me get in front of this thing and we'll talk about the issue. So yeah, the problem with some of these particularly old DSLRs is they kind of predate the expectation of using HDMI out for capture from these cameras and video modes in general. The 60D, which is what we're looking at through here now, was one of the first consumer level Canon DSLRs that was practically useful for video. And yeah, like I said, it predates using HDMI out for that kind of stuff. So we're dealing with a preview here. As you can see, the aspect ratio is all messed up. We're all squished. We're inside a little window here. So that little window is where you would ordinarily see the display information of modes and stuff. This HDMI out was for preview purposes only. It's so you could have it hooked up to a monitor and see what was going on with the camera in its most basic form, but it's not designed to be recorded or captured from, unfortunately. So there we go. I think that's made it pretty damn clear. Pretty much all the Elgato products are garbage and useless for this. If you go for the cheapo Amazon equivalents though, no problems there. You can use any standard HDMI camera you like. It'll work with the cheapest web camera on Amazon. It'll work with the most popular Logitech cameras that have ever sold in existence. I'm not even sure how many of those they've sold, the C920s and the 270s, just ridiculous amounts of those cameras. And basically any modern web camera that just works over USB without any drivers or anything on a Windows machine will and should, in theory, work perfectly with the Nintendo Switch 2, but beware anything that is a little bit older that needs special drivers just to run even on Windows, and beware products like Elgato's face cams, which also rely on special software that are all functionally locked behind. Now, I quite like the design of the Nintendo Switch camera. I especially like that its privacy shutter is bright, so you can tell from even across the room whether or not it's shut or not. Every camera should adopt that, as far as I'm concerned. That's a really smart design decision. But that's all there is to it, really. It doesn't have any kind of extension or anything. There's no way to mount this to anything else. So in my curiosity, I peeled up the rubber foot here and probably void your warranty if you're doing this, because I think I broke it a little bit there. But I found a little screw down there, and when I undid that screw, we'll find that the base comes free. Now we have something I could potentially work with here. So what I did was try to design a 3D print that would allow me to adapt this to a standard tripod, 1/4-20 mount. And what I came up with was pretty quick and dirty. This little block right here, which has a few holes in it. So that big hole there, that's for the Switch camera's little pole itself. Just slide that right in there. And let me tell you something. I don't own currently a set of calipers. So I had to do all these measurements just by eye. And I was actually using this tape measure to try and figure out the circumference and everything of all the bits and pieces we're dealing with here. And I went through a few bits of trial and error trying to get the sizes right here, but eventually got it right. Learn by doing. I really need to get a set of calipers. But yeah, that smaller hole on the bottom there, that is just the right size to replace the screw that comes with, so we can tighten that down there. Lovely. And that hole right there, that is a standard 1/4-20 screw thread. So any standard tripod mounts, no matter what the sort of base looks like, they all use 1/4-20 screws. So we can screw right into that and mount it to a variety of plates and whatnot for tripods, or indeed directly onto all manner of little mini tripods and whatnot. And this is how I actually had the camera set up at the start of the shot here. I had it connected to one of my standard tripod plates on my freestanding monopod. Well, today I learned, wait, is that broken or is it just popped off there? There we go. That's not fine. Okay. Aw, my poor old little table tripod is broken. Oh well. Point is, I can now connect the Switch camera to basically any bit of support gear that I like. This is also how I was doing the overhead shot. I was just using this little adapter here to connect it to the boom arm that I've got hanging above my desk to hang cameras above to look down. So yeah, I'll put that up on Maker or Thingiverse or one of the sites. I'll put that up on for you guys to download and print up yourself. It's very, very basic, but it does work perfectly well. And once I got that figured out, there is one other 3D print I made, especially for the Nintendo Switch 2 camera, but I'm going to save that for another video all on its own because I want to do something kind of special with it. So yeah, do make sure you're subscribed and belled and everything to keep an eye out for that. Should be a bit of fun. So there we go. Now we know. Hopefully this has been informative, interesting to you. I am Lunty. We'll catch you next time. Thank you as always to the patrons. And an extra special thank you to the Switch2 crew, of course, who were a cornerstone of helping make all of this happen in the first place.